Good evening, Luang Por, and thank you for your dissertation this evening. You mentioned at the outset Satipathanas, and you started with the body contemplation. Having moved away from maybe the more samatha style of meditation more recently to Satipatthana, I find it's leading to a separation from the people around, and it's like there's more distance between one's thinking and maybe the way the world thinks or acts or operates. Just how would you suggest managing that separation of pursuing the Satipatthana kind of as a daily meditation, and then observing the world seeming to become more distant? Thank you.
Well, I think what you're describing is very common in people's experience. One thing to remember is that the Buddha taught that the practice of Satipatthana is purified by morality, the practice of training in morality and precepts, whether it's 5 precepts, 8 precepts, or as a monastic. And the practice of what we call morality or precepts, that's quite a wide-ranging practice, and it helps you to relate to the world, to society, the people around you wisely, correctly, in a way that's not harmful. So why would the Buddha teach that? Well, because he knows that it's possible when you're practicing a lot of mindfulness and you're going into yourself and contemplating body, feelings, mind objects, you do tend to withdraw a bit from everyone and you're more secluded and more detached. There is a danger you can get to the point where you lose track of reality or your relations with other people in the world around you. But it can be just in a sort of more selfish way or sometimes in a deluded way. That is one danger. So this practice of the precepts brings us back to the world and how we interact and relate to the people around us. We will, even if you're practicing Satipatthana, even if you're a little hermit in the forest, you still got to eat. You still, live and breathe and carry out the most basic functions. So that will bring you back into touch with people, back to other people all the time. So you have precepts. That's one important part of the practice, is to found your practice on the practice of precepts, developing wholesome, skillful, kind relationships with other people. Then when you are withdrawing into your practice of Satipatthana, you're not going to neglect the things that you shouldn't neglect. Maybe you have certain family responsibilities, or you may still go to work. You still have areas of maybe some responsibility, duties, obligations in the world. So you're not completely cutting off from them, but when the time is ripe and appropriate, well, yes, you may be in a much more secluded state of mind where you're not thinking much about the world, certainly not things that are not important to you or not relevant to you, the world news, the state of the world, the economy, the government, all these sort of bigger things that the news is full of. Well, maybe, yeah, they're not that important to you, so you don't need to think much about them or relate much to them. But the more basic things, like whoever you live with or associate with and how you earn your living, your food and that, okay, that much you may still have to engage with. But if you've done that properly and well, then you'll have time and the freedom to let go and spend time, and your mental energy can be directed to the practice of Satipatthana from a place of well-being, a place of peace and relatively harmonious relations with other people. That would be your goal. But from time to time, you still will interact with the world. So, okay, you need to direct a bit of thought and planning, interaction with other people, say, in the world, but that can become part of Satipatthana. Thoughts about how you earn your living, how you interact with other people, what you say, what you do. These are all within the bounds of Satipatthana. You have feelings, emotions you experience, trains of thought you experience, objects of mind that are coming up, whether they're particularly related to your body or interacting with other people as you go about some other more mundane daily business, they can all become the basis for Satipatthana. How much you interact with the world, of course, that's something you might think about and limit, and you don't want to be doing things that are counterproductive to your practice. But as you practice more mindfulness and clear comprehension, you get better at interacting with the world skillfully and then letting go of the world when you need to and when it's appropriate. And you just carry on. And so you're not completely cut off mentally or physically from the world, but then you're not totally stuck and lost in the world either. And you're learning how to do this skillfully. So when the Buddha taught Satipatthana, he gave that example of the two ladies who come out, and in those days there's no pipe water, but they come to the well in the center of the village to draw water to take home for their chores. They meet, but they're practicing Satipatthana, so they meet at the well and they don't gossip about the government, politics, the economy, what was on TV last night, even though they didn't have TV in those days, whatever would be the equivalent. They don't do that. They ask each other, well, what are you focusing your mindfulness on this morning? I'm practicing Vedana, Nupassana, Satipatthana. I'm focusing on feeling. As I draw water, I focus on the feelings of and sensations in the body, or the mental state and the feeling accompanying that. That's what I'm focused on. Or the other one says, I'm practicing Kaya Gada Sati, I'm practicing mindfulness of the body. I'm aware of the posture, the movement of my hands as I draw the water up. This is given as an example of how you're practicing Satipatthana, but you're still interacting with the world. And this is something you learn in a monastery, in a monastic setting. Your monks, they are physically separate from towns and cities and the world, true, but then we still meet people every day. We still eat, we still interact, we teach, we perform certain services. Or the very least, if you're in the forest on retreat, you see birds, you have the very minimum interaction with the world around you, the environment, but it is still there, you're still interacting. So you learn how to make everything part of your practice of mindfulness. So on the one hand, you've got a seclusion, which is what mindfulness brings you, a sort of detached awareness, where you're contemplating objects arising, passing away, whether it's the physical body, the mental state, and so on. You have the seclusion, but at the same time you may be performing mundane, ordinary tasks as well.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Thank you. Sadhu.
Sadhu, Sadhu. We have another question here. How do you overcome samwega? My understanding of this is limited, but in meditation, I sometimes feel detached from the outside world, which is not ideal as a layperson.
Well, this word samwega is quite difficult to translate exactly in one word, but it means awakening or sobering up to reality, and it's accompanied by a certain sort of sadness. But you have to remember, it's a wholesome state of mind. It's a skillful state of mind. It's productive. It's helpful to the practice. So it's not the same as feeling sad or depressed, which is also a common experience for meditators when they look around at the way the world is and all the crazy things people do and a lot of the suffering of the world. You can feel very sad or depressed about yourself or others. it's not exactly the same as that. This is an awakening experience where you're waking up to the nature of reality. So they say, like, sobering up from intoxication. Previously you were intoxicated, you're lost, you didn't recognize the way things are, you didn't notice impermanence, you didn't notice suffering, you didn't notice the conditioned nature of reality. You interpreted everything from a place of self, and I want to be like this and that, and I want to be happy, and so on. Now, as you establish mindfulness, you're waking up to the truth. And at first that can be a bit shocking. It's a wake-up call. But in the long run, because somewega is a wholesome quality, it leads on to wisdom, understanding, effort in the practice. And that's the important part. Because it's a wholesome state of mind, it leads on to the practice. It gives you what we call a sense of urgency. So the obvious sort of ways people become awoken from their intoxicated state is, they recognize that we're all subject to aging, sickness, death. Time is running out. We're not here forever. We still have suffering. People around us are still suffering. And there's maybe more suffering around the corner. We don't know. I better get on and practice. So it gives you this sense of urgency. I want to meditate. I want to make dana, do dana. I want to keep the precepts. I want to make wholesome karma while I have the chance. Because life is uncertain, life is impermanent. So one thing is sorting out in your experience whether it's real samvega or just a more kind of depression or aversion for the world, and they're often intermingling. They come up one after the other. So you want to try and separate them out and recognize that true samvega is coming from insight, wisdom, and then build on it and use that sense of urgency to do more good for yourself and others. Practice more on every level.
Sadhu Lumpo. Next question. How to guide myself when I feel I've been treated disrespectfully from a close friend?
Well, obviously it's challenging. It's not what we want, but it happens all the time to everyone. There's probably not a single person in the world who hasn't been disrespected in one way or another, and quite often it's the people closest to us who do it. Strangers can be disrespectful, but because there's a lack of a relationship, often it's very passing or it just doesn't happen. It can happen, but often it's not that meaningful to us because it's a stranger and we let go of it quickly. But when it's someone close, because that person has meaning to us, value to us, it hurts, it's harder to let go of. So we have to work harder with it, practice harder. But it is very normal. You have to look at this, it depends on the situation. Maybe it's just a momentary selfishness or lack of compassion, lack of sensitivity on their part, which is maybe more easily forgiven. We can move on from it, clear the air, talk to them, try and repair the relationship. But then sometimes it's repeated or very deep, profound. Again, if that's the case, you might have to look into it. Well, where's it coming from? Why have they behaved like this? Maybe they have suffering in their life from a totally different angle. It's not really you, you're just the end of it. And they're suffering in their relationships, their life, their health, their money matters, and now it's coming out with you. So that may help if you think it through and learn from what's going on. That may help. It's not to give excuses for their behavior. It's more to understand what is going on and why. So you can accept what's happened without going into aversion, to maintain your compassion. As I said, not to give an excuse, so you still expect them to realize at some point what they've done wrong. Make amends would be best. If they're not ready to recognize what they've done wrong, make amends, well, maybe you have to practice more equanimity, cool things down, accept maybe the relationship is damaged, at least temporarily, sometimes permanently. You just have to accept it. And Another reflection there is, well, maybe I've done this myself before and it's come back on me, either with them or somewhere else, and this is karma at work, isn't it? Whatever happens, it's the result of past karma, whether it's more recent or more distant, depends. But if someone disrespects you, for sure you've disrespected either them or someone else in the past. So then you can look into your heart and say, could I still do this myself? Maybe you still have the seeds for your own disrespecting of other people in your heart. So then you can be more at peace with what they've done, because you know, well, you still can do it as well. You realize this is a weakness we all have, and you can understand it better. As I said, it's not an excuse. It's not, you're not excusing or condoning what they've done, but you're saying, well, if I can still do it, no need to get too angry or upset about what they've done, because I can still do it. And you're learning from the whole experience, hoping to grow, become wiser from it. And whether you can let it go, move on, repair the relationship or not, well, it all depends on the situation. You have to accept sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't.
Sadhu Luang Por. Another question. When doing meditation, I often go to sleep. When doing walking meditation, that makes me feel fulfilled and happy. Does that mean I should go on with walking meditation or still need practice sitting meditation?
Well, the short answer is yes. If the walking meditations are going well and you're becoming more peaceful and calm, happy, keep doing it. Get good at it. Make it the foundation of your practice, and accept maybe the sitting meditation will take longer to work at. Many people find this. Many people will fail to experiment with walking meditation, which is a great loss and great, it's unfortunate. But most people see meditation as something you do when you're sitting. And of course, you can probably go much deeper into states of samadhi when you're sitting. When you're walking or moving, it's harder. But nevertheless, walking is a very valuable experience, and it's a way many people strengthen their mindfulness and wisdom. And of course, when you're walking, you can still stop standing still and enter states of jhana as well. So don't forget that. And you can get enlightened in the walking posture. So, if it's working, keep doing it. What I thought you might be going to say, which you luckily didn't say, is what if I walk meditation and fall asleep? And some people have had that problem. I've even fallen asleep when walking meditation, but that was after many days without sleep. And I got so sleepy I walked into a tree, bashed my nose. But that was in a special circumstance. I've been going without sleep at all for many days. So whatever I was doing, I was falling asleep. And that was just an experiment I was doing. And I bashed into a tree, but no serious injury. Another monk I know walked into a glass door and the whole glass door shattered. So be careful of that. But if you're becoming brighter and happier and more concentrated walking, do it. Why not? Keep doing it.
Sadhu Luang Por. Next question. Having a relapse of psychosis, meditation can be hard. How do I let go of thoughts, or any kind of tips for me to overcome this? Thank you.
Right, well, sitting meditation, you're developing quite a refined state of mindfulness. So if you're not ready or in the best state of mind to do that, perhaps don't do it. It's not something everyone should do always. And if you do have psychosis, those kind of problems, maybe it's best not to meditate yet. You have to build up to it, prepare yourself more, maybe do other more active tasks that are wholesome, bring up basic awareness and mindfulness, but are more straightforward, like various chores, household chores, or chopping wood, or sweeping and cleaning, cooking, helping, out in different ways, where you're doing something useful maybe for yourself, maybe for others as well, but you're moving and you're using your thought directed to certain simple tasks so that you can ground yourself in reality and you're not too easily straying and lost into your psychosis and the trains of thought that take you away from the present moment, from reality. If you just sit there trying to meditate, often it can even make it worse. Maybe it's not the best thing for you. But if you're doing something like cooking a meal for other people, cleaning up and doing it for other people, sweeping leaves, doing gardening, chores, all kinds of things, even if it's just for yourself, it's good, but doing it for other people, even better. You're making dana barami, you're helping, and you're using your mind and body in a good way where you can be much more grounded and aware of yourself to not go into those psychotic states. Having said all this, I'm not a psychiatrist, so I'm just giving you some shared insight, but I would also seek professional help as well.
Next question. Ajahn, how do you perceive when a bhikkhu or an anagarika is asking lay people for donations? I understand in the forest tradition the sangha are not supposed to do so. So when sangha from other traditions do this, I feel strange and would think they are not following the right rules by the Buddha. But am I correct on this matter?
Well, it depends on the person, the situation, but quite possibly you are correct. Generally, our rules are that we shouldn't ask for anything from anyone who hasn't given us an invitation. Come forward saying, what do you want? What do you need? What help do you need? If they haven't done that, then we shouldn't be bothering anyone. Yesterday we had an ordination here, and when you're ordained as a Buddhist monk, certainly in the Theravada tradition, I know other traditions are slightly different, but in the Theravada tradition you take on the four basic requisites the Buddha gave us are alms food, meaning leftover food that people are willing to share with us, and we are not even allowed to ask for that. If they ask us, we can say, I need food, but if they don't ask, we can't ask them. So leftover food, rag robes, discarded cloth, foot of a tree for accommodation, and fermented urine for medicine. That's the bottom line for being a Buddhist monk. And when you become a Buddhist monk, you have to accept it may be that bottom line sometimes. Hopefully you'll get more offered to you than that, and generally in this day and age you do. But you never know. As I was saying earlier today to the monks, it's still possible even in Australia, which is a very wealthy country, if you go what we call tudong, when you're wandering from place to place without a fixed abode, kind of camping, dependent on alms, it's possible you can stand waiting for alms for an hour or two and not get anything if you're in a place that they don't know Buddhist monks, they don't know what you're doing, and you're not allowed to ask. It's possible you might go without food for a day, or you may need some medical help and no one offers it, and you might have to wait for a period of time until someone does. Or you get a hole in your robe and you really need a new robe, but no one offers you one, so you just have to patch with whatever you can get by. Even in this day and age, you may have to fall back on the very basic necessities the Buddha allowed us. But of course, most of the time we're getting much more than we need. More food, more robes, better accommodation than we really need, because people are generous and the world is more wealthy these days. But that still doesn't change the rule. We're not supposed to ask or solicit or seek out donations. We can respond when people ask us, what do you need, or what does the monastery need? So the abbot sometimes is telling people, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that, but that tends to come in response to what people ask, not going out and bothering them. So we don't do tele donations, we don't ring people up and say, give us money. We don't go out in the street, we don't send out flyers, give us money for this, for that. This is the way Ajahn Chah taught me and other monks in our tradition, and so we try our best to stick to it. And it gives you a certain independence from the world, in the sense you're not asking from anybody. You're still dependent on the kindness of lay people, of course, because you need to eat. But you're not asking anybody for anything. You're living simply, easily. When you meditate, your mind settles down quickly into samadhi, because you're not caught up in seeking and wanting things. That's the whole point of our practice, is we're letting go of cravings. So that includes, asking for donations as well. So yes, normally speaking, in our tradition, the Ajahn Chah tradition, we don't ask people for things, and we learn to be patient, go without often. And you ask any monk who's been a monk for a while, there'll be times when they've gone without things that they could have used, but nobody offered, and they just learn to go without. They don't mention it, they don't bring it up, and if no one notices, no one realizes, that's it. They just go without. We've all done that. We know what it's like.
Sadhu Lumpur. There's about 4 more questions. Do we have time to continue?
We have time. Okay. Can give brief answers at least.
So, next question is, I am a very jealous person, even though I am not committed. But when I see friends have better success than me, I often feel very jealous. How should I break the jealousy feeling?
Well, in Buddhism, we talk about a lot of the ways we can let go of certain negative mental states is by developing the opposite. The opposite of jealousy is this quality we call mudita. Sympathetic joy, appreciative joy, or in the simple term, free happiness. So you see someone else get something, they're successful, they get the perfect partner, the best job, the promotion, the money, they win the lottery, all these things. You're happy for them. That's what you have to cultivate. And obviously cultivate means work with your mind. Remind yourself there is this opposite quality. You're feeling jealous, okay, it comes up, it's your first reaction. Remind yourself, but there is actually another way of looking at this. I'll just share in their success. Wish them to be well and that they hold on to their success. Even more success if they get it, great. I'll be happy for them, I'll be happy with them. Do it often, and it gets to the point where you quite naturally look at things in this way. Rather than going to jealousy, you just look at the happiness of others, the success of others, and you are happy. And it actually just becomes a natural way of looking at the world. You notice things and you're happy for people. If you're practicing the Dhamma, what your aim is to end suffering for you and for others. So if someone else is doing well, good. There's one less job for you. One less thing for you to be concerned about, worried about. If 2 people who've been enemies get back together again, great. The world is a more peaceful place. If somebody gets the job of their dreams, even if it wasn't, you're still looking for a job, you're unemployed, and someone else gets a job, well, at least they're in a job. That's good for them. If they're happier, well, maybe some of that happiness will come back your way in one way or another, but you're just happy for them without seeking anything in return. So it's something you have to cultivate. Keep working on it. You're happier when you have appreciative joy. You're unhappy when you're jealous. Teach yourself this point. Tell yourself, give up the jealousy. You don't need it. Look for the success and happiness in others and enjoy it and be happy for them. And it becomes, as I said, it becomes natural. One of the first times I noticed this was when I first started meditating. I was a teenager, before I was a monk. I used to follow soccer, so I had my soccer team. Always you want your soccer team to win, and then sometimes the opponents win and you're upset, you're down. But when I started meditating and understanding more about mudita and the mind and what is real happiness, then I started to find happiness when the opponents won as well. And everyone would look at me and say, why are you so happy the opponents won? And I said, I'm just happy for them. They've won, that's good for them. Let them enjoy their victory. And after that, I could enjoy every soccer match, whoever won or lost. Draws are difficult because they're boring, but you start to enjoy when other people win, when other people have success, and it's catchy, isn't it? You start to find happiness this way. Other people meditate and enter jhana, and you're sitting there going, when am I going to get my samadhi? Oh, never mind, let them have it. If they get enlightened before you, good. Then that just proves that enlightenment is true and that humans can do it. And if they get it before you, good for them. Whatever.
Sadhu Lumpur. Next question. This is in relation to the previous question, which may have been about engaging with the things we still need to engage with. It goes, I have found that my drive for success in business at times runs in direct conflict with my drive for the spiritual path, e.g., feelings of greed or materialism. Is it possible to be both materially and spiritually successful? Or do you need to let go of materialism?
Yes, it is possible to be spiritually and materially successful. And to be honest, they really go hand in hand. If you are doing business, practice the Dhamma and you'll find your business goes better. Keep the precepts, be honest, and then you don't have to worry about the law and things coming back on you. Put effort in, don't be lazy, and that's good Dhamma practice. Practice mindfulness, because then you'll be paying attention to your business and you'll do it better. Use wisdom, use your intelligence, and your business will go better. You'll be more creative, you'll solve problems. Practice metta, and you can keep your staff happy and the customers happy. Really, Dhamma and business go hand in hand. But one day you may reach a point where they diverge, and then you're ready to become a monk, perhaps, or a nun. But practice Dhamma as you go along with the business. This is why the Buddha said practice dana, generosity, because it makes us happy in the present moment. And like you say, it's oppressive when you're doing business and you're just focused on your ambition, your drive for success. You can become really miserable and unpleasant to be with when you're like that. If you've ever known anyone who's like that, which I have, you don't even want to be in the same room as them. They're so angry and so driven. They're just unpleasant to be around. And you feel sorry for them, but you don't want to be around them. But someone who does business but practices Dhamma as well is often a very pleasant, enjoyable person. They may be equally successful or even more successful. But as I said, eventually, whether it's this life or a future life, you'll reach a point where there's sort of the paths, you reach a point where you say, I've done enough of the business, I've made my success, now I'm going to start giving it away because you'll have more than you need. And then you may even reach the point where you say, I don't need to do this anymore. I'm just going to become a monk or a nun and meditate for Nibbana. And I know a few people who've done that successfully, and they become great meditators and great monks and nuns. Previously, they were good business people as well. And they just, when the time is right, they move over and give it all up. So there's one monk, Lumpur Bunna, who used to be a businessman. He spent all his free time, which he'd had some of, and his excess money that he didn't need to put in the business. He was building monasteries for very good enlightened teachers, like Lumpur Khao was one of the disciples of Lumpur Man, enlightened disciples, and he supported him, built part of the monastery up, put a lot of money in. Because most monasteries, there are usually certain business people who have the funds who help to build them. Many people will help in small ways, but sometimes it takes someone with a large amount of money to do it as well. And so most monasteries will have people like that. So he was doing his business, funding a monastery, building a monastery for a great enlightened teacher, learning meditation at the same time. And he reached a point where he had great success in his meditation. He was mindful, he was peaceful, he developed insight into impermanence, and he realized, I don't need to do business anymore. When you die, you don't take your money with you, your fame, your fortune, you leave behind. So he quit the business, sold it off, gave it all away, and became a monk, and became a very good monk as well. So you just keep doing it together, hand in hand, Dharma and business together. and things will go well for you. I guarantee.
Sadhu Lumpo. There's 2 more questions. Our dog Maggie is 14 years old. She has heart murmurs and some other ongoing health issues. As I heard, 1 dog year is equivalent to 7 human years. If I use that logic, Maggie is 98 years old. Once I was told we may have to put her down one day if she becomes very sick. When I think of that kind of situation, I don't think I won't be able to take that decision, as I think Maggie and I are not so different. Because both of us are living in existence, that means both of us have to go through dukkha. Both Maggie and I will have to go through marana dukkha one day. So I have decided not to put her down if Maggie becomes very sick, or if my vet asks me to. But I will take my vet to use, I will take my pet to use any medication to help with her suffering at her last moment. But I will not take a decision to put her down. Could you please advise me if the way I think is correct according to Buddhism?
Yeah, sounds correct to me. You haven't reached the point where you have to make the decision, which is good. Maybe you'll never have to make that decision anyway, is one possible outcome. And don't forget that. You know, quite often if you look after the dog with metta and mindfulness and you practice the Dhamma, the good karma you make means that everything sorts itself out in the end without having to make these decisions. And I know many people who have had that experience. Of course, in Australia, as in many countries in the West, non-Buddhist countries, the standard is you go to a vet when a dog or any other animal is ill, and they'll say we have to put it out of its misery. That's the only alternative you're offered, injection or whatever. And you know, if you don't do that, you're considered a bad owner, you're cruel, you're not prolonging the agony of the dog, you're not doing the right thing. Unfortunately, that's the kind of cultural conditioning we have now. So I know many people who don't go to the vet at the end. They care for the dog at home, get in whatever medication they can, or they take them to the vet to a point where they're not yet on death's door, but then as they progress in their illness, then they stop going to the vet. Because of this reason, they just want to care for them to the end. And you can do that. You know, that's not wrong and it's not illegal, not yet anyway, unless somebody tries to make some kind of unfortunate case, but you know, hopefully that won't happen. You can just care for them at home just like you care for a family member. And you know, the trend in medicine now, human medicine, is that often they're seeing the value of having patients return home with care from the home, visits from healthcare professionals, but in the home environment is a much nicer place to die than hospital. Monks return to their monasteries, people return home. I know it's not always possible, but generally that's the desirable way. And the same with animals. And I've cared for dogs with very little medication, but a lot of love and support till they died. And, you know, people would say, oh, that dog is in pain. And you could see it's in pain. It's got swellings. It's got this and that problem. But I had no doubt that the dog was happy because it was cared for, loved. Nobody was saying, we're going to euthanize you. They're just caring for it, giving it. It takes a tiny little bit of water, a tiny little bit of food until it dies. But you just accept the impermanence of life. But they're dying in a loving, caring environment. I say, generally speaking, and this is a generalization, I know, but generally that's the outcome you're looking for. We all got to die, humans, dogs. Why not let someone die with love and care rather than injecting them, getting rid of them quickly, and then having doubts and guilt about doing that? So that's one answer. This question comes up all the time. I'm sure it'll come up again. So that's tonight's version.
Sadhu Lumpo. Last question. Dear Ajahn, I find the sense of self very burdensome as it seesaws from feeling superior to inferior. to feeling inferior. But at the same time, thoughts on trying to become someone special and be good constantly arises as well. Can you kindly advise me, please, on how I can contemplate to overcome this? Thank you, and sadhu.
Well, number one, pay attention, which you seem to be doing already, which comes through practicing mindfulness. So you know your habits of mind, and it's very understandable. Our culture now is one based on promoting this sense of self very strongly. I've got to be somebody, make something of my life, do things. In whatever area of life you're interested in or pursue, you've got to be successful, do things, etc. Even Buddhist monks and nuns are like this. I've got to be a great enlightened master. I've got to be a teacher, a good meditator. Whatever you do, these thoughts will come up. It's called mana, conceit, ditthi, the self-view. So practice mindfulness and reflect on it. Try and see through it. See that these are constructions of the mind, partly from external sources, society, culture, partly through your attachment to your own inner feelings and thoughts. And question it and look at it, investigate it. And the more mindful you are, you may notice that it's impermanent, not self. Perhaps the shortcut way to do it is practice mindfulness of breathing until you're very good at paying attention to the breath with mindfulness. You calm down, you relax. Where does that sense of self go? You're neither superior nor inferior when you're just noticing breath go in, breath go out. And from that place of calm, mindful awareness, investigate further this body. You know, whether you feel superior or inferior, your body gets old, sick, and dies anyway. Whether you know a lot or you know a little, you have great skills or no skills, you get old, you get sick, you die. Everything is impermanent. Your thoughts about who you feel you are impermanent, and they can change. And one day you feel superior, and the next day you feel inferior. This is all your own mind playing around with you, causing you suffering. But as you establish more one-pointedness, notice that. And don't believe it, don't buy into the stories of the mind, the creations of self so much. You know, you may not be able to drop them all immediately, but just question them, look into them. You'll find much more peace as you become more mindful. You know, as I said, when you're with the breath, the sense of self disappears, doesn't it? That's why it's peaceful. That's why you feel piti and sukha. You're not a man, a woman, young, old, inferior, superior, coarse, refined, good, bad. You're just knowing, and it's peaceful, and you can know the characteristics of impermanence. It's unsatisfactory, not self. Keep applying that, keep doing that, and you'll deal with this sense of self better and better, hopefully.
Sadhu, sadhu, Lungpo. That's all the questions for tonight.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there tonight. A lot of questions. That's impermanent, isn't it? When we started out, there were no questions, and there's gradually more and more questions. Hopefully they are all answered for now, and we'll see you next time, which won't be until the 9th of April. So there's another week or two. We're taking a break, doing other things, but we'll be back, I think, on the 9th of April. So we wish you all well.